Daylight saving time is about to start, and I'm probably about to cause a war judging from this list ranking, okay? So we're going to be ranking these superhero movies that kind of came out this year. Some of them have been good, some of them have been bad, some of them have been mediocre. Now, this is not supposed to offend anyone, but if you get uptight, then that's going to be on you. This is just an opinion. So if you have your own list, write it down below, and then we can talk about this in a respectful manner. But if you be an asshole, then I'll have to be an asshole right back. So let's talk about this list, right? So number 6 is pretty much XMen Apocalypse. XMen Apocalypse is not necessarily a terrible movie, but it's very mediocre. And it's a little bit boring for the most part, right? And I think the biggest problem with X-Men Apocalypse, simply put, is that it came after Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past fixed all the continuity errors. It fixed everything for the most part. Some things are not, some things are so badly damaged you can't even really fix that. But they managed to fix it. They got everything on track. Everybody loved it. Then it was just like Bryan Singer is back. He's taking up the ranks. He comes back for the sequel, which is Apocalypse. What happens? We're in the 80s. Do they take advantage of the 80s? No, you barely will even know it's the 80s. Do they use Jubilee? No, she's just kind of a girl that would have went to the mall, but she was in a deleted scene. Do they make Jennifer Lawrence actually do a whole bunch of shit? Yeah, but she doesn't really seem interested. But she's collecting her $20 million. The ending itself is just kind of atrocious to the point where she's leading the X-Men. Apocalypse doesn't really feel like a big enough villain that's going to end the world, even though he's in auto-tune, pretty much. There's a lot of characters that are just kind of like really wasted into this thing, but I think the biggest problem was just that X-Men Apocalypse felt like there was really no story to begin with. It was just like, oh, this guy's going to take over the world again, and we got to stop them. That's about it. There was really nothing interesting really going on, and the movie does kind of pick up its, it really does drag its feet all the way to the end until like the big final battle, and seeing Olivia Munn, in her very, skimpy Psylocke costume is actually quite cool to see, but and there's a lot of like references to comics or whatever it may be, and that's cool. A Force Wolverine cameo. There's a lot of interesting things to X-Men Apocalypse, but unfortunately I feel like it really is kind of held back by the Singer formula. I like to call that the Singer formula. The Singer formula has been going on even before the Marvel formula, and I'm talking about since 2000, and I feel like we really do need to kind of switch it up. Deadpool switched up that Singer formula. And unfortunately, I feel like we really do need that type of tone, for the most part, kind of going forward a little bit in the next X-Men. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of feel very bland. This thing's been going on since 2000, so I think it's about time we kind of switch things up, just to begin with. Number 5 is pretty much Suicide Squad. Now, some people probably really going to be pissed about this one, but Suicide Squad is a very experimental music video, as some people say. Now, there's a lot of problems with Suicide Squad. Obviously, there's the editing. The fact that David, Ayer wrote the script in 6 weeks, that's probably a big problem. But overall, Suicide Squad was the thing that a lot of people said they didn't get from Batman v Superman, which was fun. Now, overall, Suicide Squad had a very simple story, but then again, so did Deadpool. So complaining about the simple story really doesn't make any sense to me, really. But overall, yes, the music didn't really fit. I agree with that. Even though I actually enjoyed the music played, it didn't really fit, and sometimes it's just kind of there. I do feel like the movie kind of went a little bit off the rails towards the end. Dance Dance Revolution, Enchantress. There's a lot of interesting things and a lot of bad things that kind of happen. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like, why would, Harley or a lot of these other guys be on a team fighting, metahumans? But overall, Suicide Squad, to me, the biggest problem with Suicide Squad is just that it's a very light and kind of empty movie. It's very point A to point B, and there's really nothing in between it, unfortunately. Even though I enjoyed the feel of Suicide Squad and I had a blast watching it, it just is a very empty movie. And I feel like other than the characters, that I think everybody did a fantastic job usually, except maybe Enchantress, but everybody did a fantastic job. Viola Davis, I just felt like the movie really just goes from point A to point B and then point A again, almost. It's really nothing really that much going on here. Even though I enjoyed it, it is what it is. Number 4 is Captain America Civil War. Now, you're really probably going to get upset with this, but here it is. Civil War, I thought, was fantastic. And overall, it's probably the best superhero movie on this list to begin with. Now, it's not faithful to the comic book, obviously. But Civil War did something that was very groundbreaking, because I think it had some of the best action scenes out there. Black Panther was a beast. Granted, the villain obviously was not really the greatest or whatever it may be, but I enjoyed Civil War mainly because it was the next step in the evolution of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is what they all have been building up to, and it's great to see kind of close to the conclusion of the very, the very first few Avengers, pretty much, just to begin with. So I thought that was great. Unfortunately for me, rewatching it again, I do kind of find myself getting a little bit bored. I do feel like it does kind of take a little bit long, and at the end, pretty much, it's just that even though it's a great movie for the most part, I feel as if Civil War just kind of ends. And you don't want that in a superhero movie where it just kind of ends. And I feel like that's the biggest problem with Civil War to begin with. Johnny Depp once said in Secret Window that the most important part is the ending. Everybody remembers the ending. If you ever seen Secret Window, and that's the case. I don't like the ending of Civil War. You may like it, but I don't. And I feel like it just kind of ends very abruptly, and it's just like, oh, that's it. Send him a postcard via Captain America. Then it's just like, okay, there's no consequences. There was nothing really, I want to see somebody get murdered in Infinity War because we have to have some sort of thing. I don't want to see somebody walk off to the sunset. We got to have some consequences. But that's my reason for putting Civil War there just to begin with. Great movie, fantastic action scenes, but, villain, and sometimes, it just felt like it just kind of ended. Spidey was cool, obviously, there's a lot of people that was kind of like put into Civil War that just kind of felt like, hey, how he showed up, A lot of people don't think about some of the coincidences and just sign on some random, popping in here. Not everybody gets a lot of time. They get their stunts, but not a lot of time. Just to begin with. Number 3 is Batman v Superman. Now, this is probably the most controversial movie of the year. And maybe even of the decade. Now, Batman v Superman is not spectacular. Yes, it's a little bit pretentious. Yes, it's a little bit overlong, overstuffed, overflowed, whatever you want to call it. The editing's a little bit of a mess. But for me, I actually felt like a kid while watching Batman v Superman fight each other. Unfortunately, I had to probably wait about an hour and maybe 30 minutes for them to actually do it. Now, if you're going to make your movie about 3 hours long, the extent ultimate cut or whatever it may be, then I suggest you kind of use every one of those minutes to kind of make people, interested. And unfortunately, Batman v Superman does kind of fall into that category of feeling a little bit boring. And then the more times I actually do see it, because I've seen it like 3 times, it becomes a little bit more tedious. But I do notice more things that I didn't notice the first time around. And I think that's one of the reasons why I put it in number 3, is because it's a movie that I feel like I'm getting a little bit more of bits and pieces, that I did not see the first time around. Even though Zack Snyder is a little bit style over substance, as some people say. And that's absolutely true. But there's a lot of things in Batman v Superman that obviously don't work, like, the bellhopper, Lex Luthor, and on top of like Doomsday or whatever it may be. But there's a lot of things I feel like it's the most ambitious superhero movie of this year, and unfortunately their ambition did kind of fail on them. But overall, I had fun with Batman v Superman. Maybe not the typical type of fun some people will have, but I had fun with Batman v Superman, and that's just my pick just to begin with. But overall, it was a very solid film that I got my money's worth, even though it was a little bit disappointing, especially when you watch it over and over. It becomes more tedious to watch. Number 2 is pretty much Doctor Strange. Now, I didn't think it was actually this high. I saw it twice already, and the first time I really enjoyed it. Second time, I noticed even more problems. Honestly, Doctor Strange second time around, it's kind of like Green Lantern a little bit. And don't, click the dislike button real quickly, but I'm saying it's just that it does kind of feel very similar in the fact that the movie does kind of just jump very quickly to like the end, honestly. I feel like it goes very fast. And even, just to begin with, have an asshole character that's kind of like a dick, he has this thing, he kind of becomes with his girlfriend. It's very similar when you really think about it in some cases. Obviously, Doctor Strange is a much more better movie than Green Lantern, but I'm just saying that Doctor Strange was, is slightly similar. Strange is great. I don't like Benedict Cumberbatch's voice. It was very kind of strenuous to kind of listen to. But overall, it's a movie that kind of is very cool on the visuals. But sometimes I feel like they do kind of use the visuals more to kind of tell the story, like Zack Snyder, over kind of like actual storytelling to begin with. I feel like the world they set up is great and whatever it may be. And I do appreciate Chiwetel for a little bit more the second time around. Not Mads. I didn't like Mads. Though he was just like, he's just kind of there. They give him nothing. But overall, Doctor Strange was one of those movies that I feel like it seemed fresh. And it seems new and different, but unfortunately, I just felt like the humor was the biggest problem. Hearing Beyonce in the same universe as Doctor Strange and everybody else, it just seemed weird. There's a lot of cool humor, but it also was a lot of bad humor that just really didn't work for me. But that's just my thought to begin with. I feel like the humor was the biggest problem with Doctor Strange. You can't just like randomly do the cloak, pulling him backwards. The cloak reminded me of like the suit from My Favorite Martian, if anybody ever seen that movie. But that's what that shit seemed like to me. And then number 1 to begin with, also for Doctor Strange, is this that it just simply put seemed like it tried to be something different and more. And people say it would be in a sequel. Yes, that's great, but I'm judging as the movie I saw. And from what I saw, it was a movie that tried to be a little bit more different, but it was like that Marvel shit was just keep on pulling it back by the cloak. But number 1 is pretty much obviously Deadpool. Why is Deadpool number 1? Now, Deadpool's not the greatest movie. It's honestly it's probably the most overrated movie on this list. But it's overall the most enjoyable. Why? Because it was the most, clearly, faithful to the source material. And obviously that actually made well, because there's no way you can not do Deadpool faithful. Because if you don't do Deadpool faithful, you're not going to have Deadpool at all. If he doesn't talk to the fourth wall, if he's not cracking jokes, he's not doing all that, then he's simply putting out Deadpool, and you're going to shit on everybody that kind of likes the character. Deadpool, to me, was not a disappointing movie. It was not boring. It got to the point. It was very simple, like Suicide Squad. Started, it went to the beginning, the middle, the end, and you all knew all that shit. Yes, it's not a fantastic story, but the thing knew when to start, when to end, and that was the good part about Deadpool pretty much to begin with. It made me laugh. It made me get invested, and it actually made me give a shit about a sequel, and it actually made me be like, damn, Ryan Reynolds was fucking made for this role. And that's one of the reasons why Deadpool is pretty much number one. It's the only movie that I did not have a disappointment with, because I knew if it wasn't Deadpool, like if it was not faithful to the character, then it would not be Deadpool, and I doubt they would make the movie. But it lived up to the R rating. It's funny as hell. It was cool. And it seemed very different. And like I said, it was the only movie that I wasn't bored with slightly. And I actually watched it about 4 times now, and I still find an enjoyment in it. Ajax is probably one of the better villains. He's not great, but he's one of the better villains I've seen. And that's all I can really say. That's the ranking of this list. Now, whether you like this list or not, that's going to be on you. But that's my rankings, and that's how it's going to stay. Comment, subscribe, and like if you actually enjoyed this video. If you didn't, well, that's on you, I guess. But that's my opinion. Once again, I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out.